The Earth system is a highly complex system, and if we affect it or alter it without really understanding what we're going to do, what the implications are going to be, it could be quite dire. There's thousands of examples of restoration efforts gone wrong. One classic example is the eradication of sparrows in China. The sparrows were widespread across the country, and they thought that they were consuming a lot of crops. Killing all the sparrows, killing hundreds of millions of sparrows across the country, actually simply reduced the top-down pressure on all the invertebrates, which then demolished all of the crops. Crop yields fell dramatically, and this is one of the major things that contributed to the Great Chinese Famine, killing over 30 million people. So land management decisions gone wrong there, or at least ecosystem management decisions gone wrong. Another example, culling of African elephants. The African elephant was supposed to be contributing to desertification in Africa, so they killed 40,000 African elephants, and desertification got a lot worse, and that's because, as we now know, elephants are important ecosystem engineers. They dig holes that provide nutrients and water for other animals. They produce feces that provide structure and soil quality for other organisms within the ecosystem, and they're important for maintaining those natural ecosystems. And this obviously happens with forest restoration too. There's ample examples, lots of examples of restoration efforts where trees fail to grow or fail to establish. But there's also examples where they've gone drastically wrong. Large-scale restoration in China has, in the early 2000s, had fantastic impacts on carbon sequestration in many parts of the country. But in some other parts of the country, restoration was taking place in soils that couldn't sustain forests. So these could be either too dry or nutrient depleted, or they didn't have the microbiota that was in the soil available to support forests. And what we saw is that most of those trees died, and the death of those trees actually contributed to soil erosion and the depletion of soil nutrients and resources, leading to the loss of carbon and nutrients from those soils. And obviously, we've seen it in Northern Europe as well, where over hundreds of years of replacing Northern Hemisphere forests with fast-growing spruce and pine species, which are now in place of what would naturally be deciduous species, has led to a reduction of albedo, and this has drastically warmed the climate. We've seen that replacing light-colored deciduous trees with dark-colored coniferous trees has drastically altered the climate in the opposite direction that we were aiming for. So restoration, obviously, it's all very well intended. There's lots of good and honorable goals in it. But what we really need is basic global scale information so that we can unify our efforts and make sure that we're all moving in the same sort of direction. We need to understand where are the best places to restore, how do we best restore in those regions, and what impact will they have. We need to understand something about the implications, the impact of that research, of those restoration efforts, before we go too gung-ho.